Well, with Cinemax already on a hot streak, can Quarry just add to the short list of great shows? Hey guys, come over the series premiere of the new Cinemax show, Quarry. This is Season 1, Episode 1. You don't miss your water, and I was definitely looking forward to this premiere. As you guys know, this is one of my most anticipated new series, without a doubt, for two reasons. One, because I think Cinemax, like I said in my intro, is on a real hot streak right now. They've been having hit series after hit series, and each one of their shows, I mean, really is becoming one of the best shows on TV, and I really think Cinemax is really putting a name for themselves out there. But also because this show in general just looked really great, it looked really interesting, and looked very intense, and just really seemed like it was going to be another big hit, and I really can wait to see how this show is going to be. And I have to say that Quarry so far absolutely fits that description of next hit show for Cinemax. I love this first episode. I thought this perfectly set us up on this story and got us into this world, and something I think Cinemax did a really great job with this show and with other shows, and I'll talk about this when we get more into the production, things like that, is that this show, just like Outcast and The Nick, is very different than the other shows they've done. But let's just get into overall, because I really do want to talk about this show, because it's a very long premiere. It was an hour and 16 minutes, and obviously there's a lot to talk about. Sorry this took me so long, by the way, to review, guys, but let's just get right into it, because I've been 3 weeks behind. I'm going to try to watch all 3 episodes. I'll watch the first 2 tonight, and I'll watch the third one tomorrow, but let's just get into it. So we start off, we see in 1972, we get introduced to our main character, Matt Conway, right away. He's in a quarry searching for something, and he gets up, and we don't know what he's going for. There's a lot of great uncertainty here. He goes to get a gun, he then walks through the woods, and he then finds this man near the trees. We don't know who this man is or why he's going after him, but he takes out his gun, shoots him, he goes to the man, and shoots him once more in the head, just, I guess, to make sure he's dead, and then he drags his body into the water to make it look like a drowning, and then watches the body float away, and right away, I think that gets us completely hooked in, because there's a lot of questions here. What is Mac looking for? Why is he in this quarry? Who is this man? You know, what personal beef does Mac have against him? What's the reason why he's killing him? And how does Mac cover all this up? I thought it was a perfect way to start things out. I think it was just such a thrilling opening, and that's something that Cinemax has been doing a really great job with. I mean, one of the best things about Outcast, if you guys remember, was that opening scene. It was incredible, it was so shocking, and I think this show, while it's not as thrilling, you know, as shocking, because we knew that something like this was going to happen, I think it's still just as thrilling, and they did a really good job of getting us invested in this character. But then we cut to the Memphis airport. I guess, I don't know how long you know that is, because I know it's a flash forward, but I don't know if it's in the same year, if it takes place years later, I don't really know. But we see at the Memphis airport the newly returned Vietnam vets, Mac and Arthur. They've both returned from Vietnam. They're browsing the gift shop for presents to give to their wives, and Mac sees a magazine, says it's got to have some type of meaning. Arthur says he isn't sure if he's going to find what he's looking for in a Memphis airport gift shop, but Mac insists that he will. Arthur says he still thinks this whole thing is a bad idea, coming home a day early to surprise their wives, and Mac asks what he means, and he says he doesn't know what he's talking about. Arthur says he knows a year is a long time to be away, and he's liable to end up surprising himself and seeing his wife sleeping with another man. And, you know, Mac's joking around, which I thought they did a very good job. I'll talk about this, but they did a very good job of really foreshadowing, you know, what's eventually going to happen. Because while you're joking around, I mean, you can definitely tell that that could have definitely inevitably happened. And he says that Ruth must have cheated on him too. Arthur says she better not have, and Mac says there goes the sense of romance, and Arthur says he left most of it inside gone. Mac asks him if flowers are too corny, and a man says that there says to always go with them. So we don't know who this man is, but Arthur asks if he's ready to go. Mac says not yet. They see a statue of a man killing himself that says goodbye, cruel world. Very weird overall. But Arthur says it takes a lot to come home, and it won't happen again to him in his lifetime, and he'll make sure that he stays home because he doesn't want to go overseas again, we can definitely tell. So Arthur's wife, Ruth, then picks them both up. He hugs and kisses her. She says it's about time he comes back, and he says if he didn't know any better, he'd think that someone missed him. She says she didn't forget Mac either. Mac makes her confirm that his wife Joni still thinks he's arriving the next day. He gives Ruth flowers, and she asks him if they have any clothes they can change into. And immediately we get into really, I think, one of the biggest conflicts in the show. We see there are about hundreds of war protesters swarming Mac and Arthur. Reports have come in that while in Vietnam they were implicated in a massacre of a town called Quan Thang, in which many civilians and children were killed. And this is actually very realistic, because in any war, really, this kind of situation happens, where where you have these, child soldiers who are forced to kill and things like that. And yes, they might be looked at as innocent, but they're still soldiers, and they were raised to, they were brought to kill these certain soldiers. And they get away from the protesters, but I think just a very well done scene. You can tell how shocked they are. I mean, this is definitely not the ideal way to come home. They want to be welcomed a lot more, and they don't at all feel welcome. They feel like already that they don't want to be there, and they're able to get away from the protesters, though, and we see Max sees all the signs in the road, and Ruthen drops him off at his house, and he then parts ways with Arthur, thanks him and Ruth, and that's really when we get into the big stuff in the show, which I thought they did a very good job of just setting up what the story is here, showing that, this is a soldier that wanted to be welcomed back, and I think the next scene very much shows, how Max's life has changed without him. We see, arriving at his home for the first time in a year, Max takes in the place, and obviously he hasn't been there, so he's just kind of just taking in everything he's seen. Because, I mean, imagine if you were away from your house for a year. I mean, it's kind of a crazy feeling. Just forgetting everything in your home and want to come back to something again. He finds Joni picking leaves out of the pool. She immediately jumps into his arms, kisses him, and he says it doesn't look like she hasn't seen him in a year. She says that he was supposed to be here tomorrow. He says that's why they call a surprise, and he gives her the flowers. She shows him where she has kept his records. She says that it made her listen to them, but doing that just made her sad, and he says the place looks like shit. She says that he's home just in time to help them clean things up, and she asks him what's wrong. He says it just doesn't seem like him, and she says it is, and tells him to kiss her, and she takes the dog tags around his neck off, and they quickly get down to sex, we see, and again, something just feels very distant between Mac and Joni. Even though Joni seems like she's happy to see Mac, something between these two, it just seems kind of broken, and we don't really know what it is yet. So meanwhile, we then get introduced to this man. He's sitting in a car outside the Conway home. He's keeping tabs on Mac, and it's the same man that told him to buy the flowers, and he takes pictures out of his house. He's taking pictures of his house. He takes out his cigarettes and smokes, and I thought it was kind of cool. The second he smokes, Mac and Joni are also smoking, and she asks him if he's really home. She says she's going to pinch him. He asks if she dreamed about him, and she says that she forgot his face, and she says that she forgot his smell. He says that he's got something amazing for her, and she asks what it is. He pulls it out, and it's actually the suicide statue. They both joke around about it, and he says that they can put it in her collection, and he asks what happened to all of them. She says she just needed the space, and again, he can tell that just so much has changed without him, and I thought they did a very good job. It's just the subtlest of things, like her statue collection being gone, or his record collection. You can just tell that something is off about Joni. You don't know what it is, but something is going on. You know that's not just that she missed him. There's definitely more going on there. She thanks him. He says she doesn't have it on display or anything. She says she has the perfect spot for it. He says it's the trash. She puts it on the windowsill and says he can see it anytime he does the dishes. He tells her to come over and then throws her into the pool. Then he jumps in, and we see repeatedly throughout the episode, we see this vision where he imagines people, drowning with him. One of them is imagine Joni kind of drifting away, and I thought it was a very, psychologically subtle way of just showing how distant these two already very are. I mean, Joni has pretty much lived her life without him for a year, and he's now back into it, but he doesn't feel like he's as much of a part of it as he was when he left, and I think it's very interesting that we saw that. So he pulls out from the water, obviously because he's getting these really crazy visions, and she asks if he's okay. He says never better, and he then watches a presidential debate about what to do with China. He then gets a call, goes to the phone, but no one seems to answer. He looks outside, and we then see Arthur back to his community, which is filled with tons of other black people. I think he's living in, Harlem or one of those kind of places. I don't really know, but there's a lot of people there. Ruth then calls him in for breakfast. His son Lou asks if he wants bacon in his waffles, which is something Ruth has been doing since he's been gone. He says he misses when they just had cornflakes, and she says that they still have some of them. He says that Lou has been beating him at basketball, and he's away for a year, and the place goes to shit. And she tells him that he's not in the barracks anymore. He tells his children not to swear, and he says he knows. Tells her nothing in the barracks is as sexy as her, and you can tell that his life with Ruth is a lot different than life with Joni. I mean, these two actually seem like they're close. It seems like things are actually going pretty well for Arthur, and he tells her he has to go. He's going to be late. She tells him to sit down and eat first. He says he has to go and asks her if he looks like management material. His daughter says he looks like a giraffe. He says his checks aren't coming, and he doesn't want her to be the only one bringing home the waffle bacon. She kisses him. He leaves. He then goes in for a job interview working at a factory of sorts, and just by the nodding of the head, we can just tell that obviously he's not doing very well. He doesn't seem to qualify for the job pretty well, and I like the way they very subtly showed that he didn't get this job. You know, they didn't show us the conversation. We could just tell from the man nodding his head that this really, whatever happened, really did not go well for Arthur. We just don't really know if he got the job now, which I thought was very subtly done the way they did that. So at his sparsely attended welcome home party, Mac's father, Lloyd, tells him that when he got home in Okinawa, the first thing his grandfather said to him was that he needed to get a job, and that was it. He didn't tell him he was proud, nothing. It was a very soft touch. Joni asks if he's proud. He says he thinks he needs to get a job, and she goes to set the table. Mac gives her the money. Mac tells Lloyd that he quit smoking, and Lloyd said he'd bring him home if he could, but with the economy, the real estate is in the shitter, and there's just nobody buying houses. So, he would give him the job of real estate, but there's just no one to really, no one really wants it right now because the economy's not that great. So Mac said he'd like to see some now that he's back. Lloyd says that it'd be best if he didn't come by the house for a while because of the whole Quan thing. Mac's stepmother, we see, has never really liked him, and with recent reports about violence in Vietnam, she doesn't want him anywhere near the house, obviously, because, there's all kinds of public stuff surrounding him, and even his own stepmother doesn't see him as her son. She sees him as someone that she just doesn't really want around, and Lloyd lets him know he's proud of him, and if his mom was still alive, she'd be too. Max says she may have let him come by the house. Lloyd says it's not like that. Max says it's been a real treat, thanks him for the booze, and then leaves with Joni. So, once again, another person who doesn't really want to be near Mac, and that continues throughout the episode. But again, in this scene, you can tell that Lloyd clearly does care about him, but at the same time, Lloyd, you can tell, doesn't really want to be near him because of Mac's reputation, and that definitely is a big part, not just throughout this episode, but I think throughout the course of the show in general. So we then see Buddy, who is the guy keeping tabs on Mac. He's rocking out to music in Spanish, which, very funny scene. I can already tell this guy is kind of going to be the comedic part of the show, which I definitely like seeing. He receives a visit from an older man known only as the Broker. We don't know who he is or what his background is, but he just calls himself the Broker. And he asks him if he wants beverage, and he refuses. The Broker asks if anything stuck out, and Buddy says nothing except the poor kid never had a chance. Buddy asks who is taking direct, and tells him to make sure it's not Carl, he'll do it himself, and the Broker says that he'll take charge of whatever plan there is in store for Mac, and the Broker leaves, and I don't really know, we don't know much about the Broker, but right away we can tell this guy is really, really shady, and clearly there's something he wants from Mac, and you don't know if it's good or bad, but Carl sees in, flips him off. Very funny scene overall, but I definitely like the way this set up, obviously, that the Broker and Mac are about to come in contact. So we then get this brilliant scene where Mac is at a high school, a high school swimming job where he won a state championship, and he meets with Coach Monty Bland, who tells him the former Coach Owen spoke highly of him for his good work ethic and strong character and a good leader overall. And Max says that he was a tremendous influence. Monty says that he was a good teacher, but unfortunately, he thinks he gave him bad intel, and Mac wonders what he means. Monty says they don't currently have an open position, and one of the assistants that was leaving there now is staying on to the end of the fall, and Max says that they may need someone, and Monty says that then they're looking at winter break, so they wouldn't, and Max says next year he could find something until then. Monty says to not count on it. Max says that this is something he knows he can do, that he'd actually be really good at it, he could be a volunteer and advisor. I mean, you can tell this is something that Mac has put his heart and soul into. We kind of get the impression that this is something that Mac has probably wanted since he got out of high school, and it's just something he hasn't really been able to do, and Mac tells him not to count on it, and basically Monty tells him not to count it. He says he's sorry. Mac thanks him for his time, and you can tell, obviously, Mac is frustrated, but at the same time, you can't tell if Monty's saying this because of Mac's reputation, or if they really can't get anyone, and I kind of got the sense that, yeah, they can't really get anyone right now. So Mac receives his paycheck for fighting in the war, and he only gets $156.68. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that? They fought in 2 wars where he could have possibly died, and yet they only get $156. If you guys didn't know, the Vietnam vets were kind of just forgotten. Nobody really seemed to care much about them, and I think they very realistically portrayed that here. And Joni says that he will find a job something better than a high school swim coach, and he asks her what happens if he doesn't, because that's barely one payment on the house, the car, and the pool, and she says he built the pool with his bare hands and her paycheck isn't nothing. He says maybe the house is just too much for them, and she tells him to slow down since he's only been home for a few weeks. She says to let her wear the pants around for a while and tells him to get dressed since they're meeting Andrea in the theater in 15 minutes. Now, we don't know who Andrea is, but he says he's going to stay here tonight, and she asks why. He asks him if he wants to find out how the apes conquer the planet, and he says he'll be fine. He says he just doesn't feel like going. She says it's going to be alright, they'll figure something out, and he tells her to pop her lips for him. She does. He tells her it's better than he remembered. She tells him to come to the movie, and he tells her to go and have fun. So you can tell, obviously, that he's very upset, and I think he kind of is a little bit embarrassed, since I think he wants to be able to, you know, provide for the family and be the one who is making all the money, but it seems like she's the one that's doing that. He doesn't want to have to rely on his wife, and I think it very much shows how caring of her a person Mac really is. I mean, even though people see Mac as this person who killed a bunch of people, in general, you know, Mac really is a good guy, and we definitely see that. So he's floating in the water in the pool. The broker goes to him and says dead man's flowing is a little dramatic. This is really when we get into the actual plot of the show, and they did a really great job with not just making this all exposition, because there is a lot of exposition to get through, but it's stuff we want to know about. I mean, we obviously want to know what this guy's deal is. You know, what is his connection to Mac? Was he really offering him? I think they did a very good job with that. So he says a total stranger walks right through his house, and he doesn't seem to be worried at all. He's ready, and Mac asks if he should be worried, and the broker said depends on where this goes, tells him his wife is fine, she's enjoying a movie with a friend, and he has a man stationed outside the theater, and if anything were to happen to him, he will make sure that Joni is not so fine, and asks him if he understands. And this shows us two things. One, the broker definitely is someone who is definitely, you know, he's very negotiable, and he likes to get the point across, but if you mess with the broker, he will definitely do some serious things to you and your family. You definitely do see that. So he asks him if he understands, tells him it's just a little insurance policy. He asks to come in. Mac asks if that matters, and if he says no, the broker then sits down at the table, asks if he has a glass, and Mac gets out of the pool. He goes to get a glass, and we then see, you know, right there is Carl, who tells him just the glass, and I almost said Kyle. This is not Outcast. I don't know why I'm saying Kyle, but Carl tells him just the glass. Mac asks if he wants a drink too, asks if he's hungry because there's leftover cake in the fridge. He goes back to the broker, who quotes William Faulkner and says that he was a Four Roses man just like him, and Mac asks who he is and what he's doing in his home, because obviously, you know, he just randomly came into his home. So the broker introduces himself, and he then offers him a adopt kit filled with tons of cash, and I mean just wads of cash. Like, it's crazy. The broker explains he's offering him a chance to make real money right here at home, doing what he did overseas, and the broker basically, you know, killing. And the broker says he provides a service, permanent ones, and Mac asks if he's asking him what he thinks he is. The broker said depends on what he thinks he's asking him, and says his guess is a smart guy like him, got a good idea. Mac asks if they're part of the mob, and then thinks that they're CIA, because he's just really trying to figure out what's really going on, and Mac says he'd hate to ruin his trip and let him know he's not interested. But the broker asks how much of a high school swim coach makes these days, roughly $5 grand a year, but he didn't land it, and there's 30 grand, that's 6 years teaching shitty little kids how to Australian crawl. All is in advance, take it and enjoy it, but buy Joni a car. And Mac asks what happens next. So the broker then tells him that over the next several months, he'll approach with different jobs, and each one pays $4 grand until he's earned out, and Max says that he'd be the broker, and the broker says he's an agent between him and his clientele. He does them, and he doesn't know them, and they don't know him. It's all clean and personal, perfect system, and all he has to do is pull the trigger, something they both know that he's very good at. So now we're kind of seeing what that first scene had to do with. This probably was his job, and Max says just because he follows him around for a few days doesn't mean he knows him. The broker asks why he came back to Vietnam. He's drafted to serve a country, and he comes home to his beautiful wife and pool, and then one whole year later, he goes back and he doesn't know why, and Max says that he wouldn't understand, and the broker says that he would, and says he knows what happened to him in Quan Thang, what really happened, and Mac tells him to leave now. We kind of get the sense that maybe something more happened there that we don't know about. I mean, obviously there were people killed, but I kind of think like something definitely happened in Quan Thang that changed Mac and Arthur. It's not just seeing people killed. I feel like something more happened, and Buddy then comes out. The broker says it was war. He had to do what he could to survive, and Mac tells them both to leave. The broker says he needs to understand that it is in everyone's best interest to keep this conversation between them, and Max says if anything happens to his wife, it's going to be in his best interest to find a deep dark hole to die in, because he will come looking for him, and he'll find him and put him in it. So the broker wishes him luck, says he doesn't have any idea how bad it's going to be for him out there, and thanks him for the whiskey, and then leaves. So you definitely get the impression that something bad is going to happen, and Mac does too. Immediately, he takes out a shotgun, closes the curtains, basically terrified that something is going to happen to Joni. I mean, he really can tell that that they mean business, that when they say they're going to do something bad to Joni, he knows they're actually going to, and he attached it to his bed in case they come back, but then he is relieved to hear Joni come into his house, and he says that, she says she's okay. She goes to him, asks if he's okay. He says he's great and just went for a swim, and basically, tries to do whatever he can to keep calm. So the next day, he tries to get a job at an auto mechanic repair shop, and we see that he does in fact get it this time. So Arthur, meanwhile, has taken a job making furniture, and they then commiserate at a bar about the rough transition into civilian life, which you can tell that, both of them are very rough, obviously, transitions, but Max is a lot rougher. Arthur seems like he's actually doing pretty well. Arthur tells him to put his money away since it's on him. Max says he's spending money like he's at the Thai whorehouse, and Arthur says other than the shit work and no money being paid in his own hometown, it's going okay. And Max says he can't take another round. Joni's making dinner and he has to go. Arthur says the round is on the bar, and Mag asks what he's doing. Arthur says he can't believe that he risked his life, that they're getting blown to, and they throw fruit at him in the airport to buy a round of whiskey, and all of a sudden he split Wilson to them. So Max said he didn't realize that there was so much money being shitty off his furniture, and he says he thought that that's where they're supposed to be, and Arthur says he quit, and Mac asks what he's talking about, because obviously, they need money. How did he just get all this money all of a sudden? So Arthur says he's got something to show him. He takes Mac outside to his car, and Arthur reveals that the broker actually did approach him, and that he agreed to become a hitman, and unlike, Mac, he actually is doing financially well, and when Arthur asks Mac to be his partner, Mac initially we see refuses, and Arthur asks if he doesn't want to be a grease monkey all his life. Mac says he doesn't, but he's gonna get killed under a fucking car, and tells Arthur to remember his family. Arthur asks who he thinks he's doing this for. Someone's gonna put this much money up to have him killed, and if he's already dead, shit is done, and if it ain't them taking the money, it's gonna be somebody else. And he's not wrong. Obviously, if they say no, the broker will just go to the next Vietnam vet that's returned. They're not the only Vietnam vets that have returned. There are other ones that are obviously being, shit on, and Max says if he does this, he is who they say he is, and Arthur says for a 30k advance, he'll do whatever, and Max shoves him, and Arthur says they already are what they say they are, where has he been, and asks him if he feels anything anymore, one human emotion, because he doesn't feel like he has any. Now, it might just because of the PTSD, but also because of everything he's seen, it really does change you, and I think they did a very good job with showing how much war does change a person. You can tell that it's really changed both Mac and Arthur, and he says that he's going to need a partner and wants somebody to watch his back. Mac initially says no, obviously because he wants no part of this, but Mac is then the auto mechanic, and his boss says he knows who he is and lets him know he doesn't believe anything they say about the Quan thing, and Mac says he appreciates it. The boss says that it wasn't a massacre, media makes them out to be the villains, while the goddamn VC are, little 3-year-olds are sniffing little 3-year-old kids out of the rice patties of their hands, and Mac hugs him at first, but he then puts him onto the car. He almost closes him in. You don't know what he's going to do, but it seems like he has some sort of flashback, and he just almost kills him, but he's then stopped by another employee. Max says he's sorry, and he then goes to the pool, goes to Joni, who asks him if everything is alright. He says he's gonna drip water everywhere. He finally agrees to do one kill, though, we see. He rationalized that I think the 4K could tide him, the 4K could tide him over until he finds a stable job, but after that, he's out. So, following the targets, who is a one-legged private detective, Mac and Arthur then track him back to his apartment. Very tension-filled scene here, because you really don't know if they're actually going to be able to kill this guy. Mac then scouts the scene from a window across the way, while Arthur sneaks into the apartment, and unseen by Mac, another man Suggs in the apartment, fires at Arthur, just killing him right then and there, which I was shocked. I honestly was shocked, because I really thought this show was going to be tracing the lives of Mac and Arthur, but no, Arthur's killed in the first episode. That's a really ballsy decision for this show. You were thinking, the show made it look like Arthur was going to be the second main character, and no, they just kill him right there. So Mac rushes over, he attacks both the unseen assailant and the detective. The detective manages to escape, but Mac kills the guy who shot Arthur. However, Suggs does escape, we see. So he doesn't, in fact, get him in time, unfortunately, but you can tell this is when Mac knows he means business. This is when Mac knows really what he signed up for, and really, this is what makes Mac make the decision he does throughout the rest of the episode and the rest of the show. So Mac then goes to Arthur's funeral, and him and Joni do not feel like they belong. They did a really great job with showing how different a Baptist church is. Everybody's clapping and singing, but they're not. And I don't know if it's because of the fact that they don't feel like they're welcomed, or that there's tons of guilt looming in on both of them, and he ends up leaving the service mid-song because he just can't take it. It's because he knows that partially this is his fault, and Ruth then gets a call from Mac and says it's all the detectives, but it's actually the broker who says that they have some things to discuss, and Mac says that's not gonna work for him. The broker says he has 30K, he has 30,000 reasons why he will make it to work, and says he is to meet him tomorrow night at 5 at a rhinestone quarry. So he hangs up the phone. He then tells Joni and Ruth that the detectives wanted to be at the station. Ruth says if he knows why he was there. Max says he had no idea, but Ruth says that one minute he's working in a furniture factory, the next he's dead, and she had her husband back for 1 month, and the second that she had him back, he was just killed. And she goes to get the door, and Mac excuses himself to the bathroom where he tries to pull himself together, and obviously, I mean, you can just tell that he feels very guilty for what happened. So, back at the house, Joni says they should go for a swim. Max says he can't find Otis Blue, this one record, and she says she doesn't know where it could be. He asks if she loaned to someone like Andrea. She tells him to calm down. She asks him why he's like this. She tells him that they should just go for a swim, and he just freaks out on her because he finally tells her nothing is where it was, and she has moved everything, and he just feels like, again, that life has moved on without him, and he doesn't want to feel the way. He feels like nothing is the same, and even though he's in his house, it doesn't feel like his house, and she says she's sorry. His record is in the same spot. He tells her to forget it. She says she shouldn't have moved it, and again, you can just tell there's something distant between the two. You can't really tell what it is, but he said he's going for a drive. She says she'll come with him. He tells her to stay while he takes a minute to clear his head, and she asks if he'll be back for dinner. He says he doesn't know, but probably not, and she asks how long he's going to be gone. He says he doesn't know, and he goes to meet with the broker at the old quarry, and such an intense scene because you don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, you can just tell the broker means business, and he shoots at Carl, tells him to put down the gun, then points the gun near the broker, tells him he wants him to leave him alone, and the broker says he understands, but there was just a tiny part of the money that he gave to Arthur, and now he's guessing by the fact that he's pulling traps and firing guns that he doesn't have the 30K to give him. And Max says that he should just pull the trigger, something they both know he's good at, and the broker says because he knows he's not that stupid, and he knows that he's not just that gullible. He knows that obviously he needs to be more coerced into it. And Max says it's bullshit, and then he's shot by an unknown gunman. We don't know who it is, but Carl says it's a nice try. And again, it really does show that the broker knows what he's doing, and that he does mean business. And he reads an article about the 2 victims they killed and says it takes a certain kind of man to do that thing, hauled out from the inside, hard as rock, kind of like the place, and says maybe he'll call him Quarry because he's kind of hard as a rock. I mean, you can tell that Mac just has this dark side of him that he didn't really have before, but from coming back from the war, he now seems to have. And Mac then explains that it's only because Arthur needed a partner, and Carl says he did a bang-bang job on that one. Mac asks who the fuck he is, his butler, and the broker says he told him to use care and caution, and neither one of them obeyed. You know, he said instructions, so he doesn't really see how that's on him, which he's not wrong, to be fair. I mean, yeah, he told them to be careful, and they just weren't. I think they thought that they had, and I don't think they knew that Suggs was going to be part of it, and Mac does say he'll come with the money, or he'll find the guy, and the broker says killing one-legged man seems to be out of reach for him. He has another job for him. Mac asks if they're done after that. The broker laughs, says it's a start. Mac asks what he's going to do. Is he just going to keep putting the money over his head? The broker says that he gave Arthur 30K, and Mac asks what he needs to know, and he then goes to meet with Buddy and reminds him that they met at the airport. He says he's glad he's on their side because he would have hated to deprive the world of all this, and Mac then tells him that the broker says he should see him, and Buddy then hands him a file identifying his next target, which is a guy named Cliff Williams, and Mac asks what he did. Buddy says he was part of the group that killed Martin Luther King, and I actually thought that he was serious here. Mac asks if he's serious. Buddy says that he's too precious for words. Then that, obviously, he didn't actually do that, but he actually pissed someone off, and unfortunately for Cliff, it was the wrong somebody. Now, we don't know who that is, but they both agree all humans are nothing but unpredictable, and he says he's not going to tell them they're doing the world a service, but in fact they are. And he then gives him another bag of cash that also contains gloves and keys for his new car. So Buddy says he's sorry for his loss, gives him a hug, and then Mac leaves. And you can tell that Buddy definitely is a lot different than the broker. He seems to be a little bit more open, and he seems to be a lot more friendlier, but at the same time, he's just as crazy. You can definitely tell. So he then drives to find Cliff, and then Mac realizes that the guy is in fact driving to Mac's own home. So this is where Mac's really confused. Obviously, this guy, he has personal beef, but why the hell would he be going to Mac's home? But then comes the kicker, and I will say that I did see this come, but I thought this was a very well done twist nevertheless, and we see Joni answers, she and Cliff embrace, they proceed to the bedroom, and basically we realize this entire time that Joni has been so secretive towards Mac because her and Cliff have been having an affair, we definitely see, and it definitely does make sense. I mean, obviously Mac wasn't around, she needed someone to help herself to, and Mac just wasn't enough, so Mac can barely watch all this go down. He then makes a call to the broker, says he knew, and the broker says that he did. Mac asks why he didn't just tell him. The broker says because he wouldn't have believed him, he needed to see it for himself, and he asked him if he knew how he managed to survive 2 tours. He would say to himself, you only last if you don't care, but Mac admits that he did in fact care, and even though people think he didn't, that he did care. You know, all those victims he killed, they really did have a great impact on him, but they've really lessened him. You know, you can definitely tell. I mean, again, after you see what you see, you really aren't the same person, and Mac is definitely turning out that way. However, if there is anything that shows that Mac is changing into that dark persona as the Quarry, it is this next scene where he goes to Cliff's house, he finds him listening to music while he makes repairs under his car, and Mac notices that the record is in fact his, one that's been missing from his collection since he returned from Vietnam, and rather than just shoot Cliff, he just kicks the wedge, propping the car up, and he just crushes him under the vehicle. I mean, such a savage move, but again, I don't blame him. I mean, this is obviously someone who, his wife, you know, has been keeping this huge secret of her having this affair, and he had no idea, and I thought that was an incredible scene that we saw. The broker then tell him life is awfully complicated, and Max says the death isn't, it's just a switch that gets flipped off, and the broker says he's absolutely right about that. And again, just seeing that, you can clearly tell that Mac is definitely hardening and has this violent, darker transformation that I don't think even he really can comprehend. So we then get to the end of the episode, which I thought was so well done. Joni wakes up to find Max swimming laps in the pool. She spots the reclaimed record player with a handgun on top of it, knowing that something went down. Obviously, she doesn't really know what capacity, but I think it's the second that shows her she definitely cannot trust her husband, and he definitely does not trust her. But that is the way the episode ends. Really great stuff overall. Let's talk about the show overall and really what I do like and where I think the show is headed from here. So really an amazing premiere that I think perfectly set up the story and into the characters, but there's so many great things going on within this show, and I think the first thing definitely talk about is the cast. Right off the bat, this cast, I think, is very perfectly casted. I think definitely it's something that Cinemax has done a very good job with all 3 of the shows I've watched from them. The Nick, Outcast, and now Quarry. Everyone really is casted very well. But let's talk about our lead here. Logan Marshall Green as a character, Mac, already has this character down perfectly. I loved this character. I think Logan Marshall Green absolutely killed it, and something I think he got done so well just in this first episode is brilliant realization of who this character really is, and that's something that's not really easy to do in a lot of first episodes, especially when you first get into a character. It can be a little bit shaky, you know, not really knowing what the character's motive really is and who they really are, but I think he did almost a pitch-perfect job of just immediately getting right into this character and knowing what this character stands for, you know, knowing who he is, knowing what this character is all about. Again, it's something that's very hard to do, but I think he did a very good job with that, and I'm definitely interested in getting more into Mac's head, because you can tell that Mac, he is genuinely a very nice guy, and he definitely is someone who he wants the best for his family, and he does want to make a life for him and his wife, and I think he did kind of want a baby. But now that Joni has, you know, having this affair, this is really what's going to break him, and it's going to send him on this violent vengeance. Between that and Arthur's death, it's really showing him that the world is very much changed without him, and it's not for a positive way. It's definitely gotten a lot darker, and he himself, you can tell, his soul is darkening, and he's getting a lot darker as well, and the question is, where's that going to go? We'll have to see as the show goes on, but I thought that was a very, very well done the way they did that. I thought he was incredible in this first episode, and I can't wait to see more of where he's going to go. We saw a lot of those, you know, underwater things where he got into his psyche. We don't really know what that's all about, but I can't wait to see more where his characters are going to go, and how is he going to go from where he does in this first episode to what we saw in that flash forward. That's a big question. I'm definitely looking forward to that and many questions, and that's one of the reasons why Logan Marshall Green is so great as this character. Who I really do want to talk about in this first episode, I know that he did get killed off, but Jamie Hector I thought was so good as a character of Arthur. This is a character that I think easily could have just gone under the radar, but because he did such a great job in just showing how this character felt and his emotion, he really resonated with me. I was honestly very sad when he died. I mean, this is someone that was by Mac's side for about 2 years, and knowing that, you know, his partner was gone, his best friend, someone that's been his only confidant in the war, someone that Mac really saw as the only person he could relate to, he's just gone, and this is really what breaks Mac, and I think their relationship overall is going to be one of the key things going into the show. You know, he doesn't have that person that he can relate to, and it's definitely going to be sad to see what happens with that. Jodie Balfour in the show, I really did love the character of Joni, because again, you can tell from the second that Joni's introduced, there's something very distant about these two, and now that we know that she did in fact have this affair, the question is, does she really love Mac still, or did she just do this because she was starting to fall out of love with him? You know, the question is, does she still reciprocate those same feelings that he still has for her? That's really the big question. They definitely do have the chemistry, but again, the show, they kind of have broken chemistry, because you can tell that things did change, and I'm really wondering, you know, did she change it for just because, you know, he wasn't around and it was weird for her, or was she really just growing very disinterested? And that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, and I think the relationship is a very complicated one, but I think a very realistically portrayed one, especially for the time period that it takes place in. Damon Harriman as Buddy, I love this character. I've always loved Damon Harriman. Ever since he played, you know, Dewey Crow on Justified, he was one of the best parts of that show, and he's great here. He's so funny. He's such a casual guy, and I already really like his relationship with Mac. I mean, you can tell this is someone that you don't know if he necessarily respects, but definitely someone that he wants to help and actually is doing, you know, is helping with, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where their relationship goes, but I overall really do like this character. He's definitely was a lot of fun. Carl in the show, we don't know a ton about him, but he definitely was very good. I can't wait to see where he goes. And then Moses, we do hear one name drop of this character of Moses, who works for, you know, the broker, and we don't really know who he is either, but I'm looking forward to getting into his character. And then the only other character to really talk about, I mean, Nikki Amuka Bird was good as Ruth, but we didn't really see her character alone. A lot of it was just her and Arthur, but already you can tell this death is going to have a great impact on her, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. But Peter Milan as the broker just completely slays this character. I mean, he knows everything about this character. You can tell this is a character that he could just play with his eyes closed. He is so great when it comes to this role. I mean, this is a guy that is both very intimidating, but also very negotiable, and he's kind of like that gangster that comes up to you that acts very friendly, but at the same time means serious business, and he just did a really great job as this character. I can't wait to see really where he's going to go, if he really wants to help Mac, or if he just wants to screw him over. We can't really tell, and I can't wait to see where that's going to go. His relationship with Mac is going to be one of the most essential parts of the show, probably the most essential, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go as the show progresses. Overall, I think the cast is fantastic. I think everyone really did a great job. The directing here as well, though, I really do love in the show. I think it's very well directed. The tone, obviously, is very dark, and there's something definitely very melancholy about the show. Even in the beginning, when we had those happy scenes, you could tell the show was going to get definitely very dramatic, but they did a good job not making it melodramatic. The best thing about this first episode was by far the script. The script of the show is perfect. I mean, I really couldn't see a single problem with the script, because it's so accurately portrayed 1972 Vietnam. You know, the way that the world depicted 1972. This was a time where people were so against war. The world as we know it was changing, we could definitely tell, but also that people were so against war, and the fact that they were blaming these soldiers is complete bullshit, but it is what happened, and I think it's a very realistic portrayal. And the way that people look at Mac and Arthur, that is in fact how soldiers were looked at, and like I said in my review, that soldiers were kind of ignored. I mean, they kind of just came home and nothing really happened to them after that. They fought the war, they said thank you for your service, and that was the end of it. And it was very sad to see, but that's kind of the dark reality of it all, and I think they did a very good job of portraying that, but they also did a very good job with getting into Mac's life and getting into, you know, his psyche overall. A big part of the show, like I said, is going to be his transformation from Mac to Quarry as the broker sees him. You know, that's what he's going to call him, Quarry, and I can't wait to see the way he makes that dark transformation. And it's definitely kind of tragic as well, especially with Joni cheating on him, but also the fact that, I'm going to keep calling her Jody because her name is Jody in real life, but her name is Joni in the show, so that's really annoying, because it's hard to not call her Jody, but Either way, I think it's also going to be interesting to see how he deals with Arthur's death. It's definitely taking a great impact on him, and I can't wait to see where that's going to go. Who else is he going to kill? We'll have to see. And how far can he go as, Quarry without getting caught or, getting condemned? Because I feel like the broker's someone where if you end up getting yourself caught, he doesn't care. If you get caught, that's on you. There's not much I can do about it. You get caught, that's your fault. I'm not going to help you with that. I think that's definitely where we're headed with that, but we'll have to see what happens there. And I think they did such a great job of setting up basically what the story was going to be. Because, yes, I pretty much knew that Joni was having an affair. I mean, the second that she was introduced, I'm like, there's definitely something off about Joni. I pretty much knew that she was definitely having an affair, but I think they did a pretty good job of foreshadowing that. I mean, right in the beginning, you have that scene where Arthur's joking around with Max saying, oh, your wife is cheating on you, and he doesn't think much of it, but it actually is happening, and that stuff did actually happen. That's not just them wanting to do an adultery storyline, that's something that would actually happen. I mean, especially when you're away from your husband for so long, you can kind of understand why that happened. Now, I'm not justifying what Joni did, obviously, but something like that has happened and can and will happen, and I think could even happen possibly today. Very sad to see, but unfortunately, that's what happens. But they did a very good job with that. I thought the cinematography in the show is just so great. I mean, you definitely feel like you're in that time period. And that's something I noticed about the show right away, is that I felt like I was in the 70s. It doesn't at all feel like this is filming the 70s. It feels like the show was filmed in the 70s, and they did such a great job of that, especially nowadays. Because of how different things are, it's not easy to film that time period, but they did such a great job of depicting it, showing how different the world was, showing the way people dressed, the way people acted, the music. I mean, there's some horrible 70s music out there, and they definitely did in this episode. Not saying it was horrible in this episode, I'm just saying there's some really bad 70s cheesy music out there, and that was here. The really weird lawn hairstyles, that's in here. Just everything about it is so 70s, and I love that. But also, I think the killing scenes as well. Something I do love about the show is that it's not really an action show, and I've heard people talk about this, that the action scenes, yes, they're very thrilling, but they're more meant to show the emotional impact rather than see just someone get killed and kind of just be, a genre show. It's definitely more of a personal show, and I like the way the show did that. When a show really understands its characters, that really impresses me, and I think they did that very well in the show, and I can't wait to see where that's going to go overall. Overall, I was very impressed with this, and I really am loving where the show is headed. But that's my review of the first episode of Quarry. Let me know what you guys thought of this first episode overall. Like I said, I am going to try to watch the second episode tonight. Hopefully I'll get to it. If not, definitely tomorrow. I will review all 3 episodes by tomorrow without a doubt, because there's nothing on tomorrow. There's Fear the Walking Dead tonight, but I don't really care about watching that live. I'll review that tomorrow, but that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this first episode overall. Do you like where the show is headed? Please don't spoil what happens in episodes 2 and 3, and we'll see you guys next video, which will be for episode 2 of Quarry, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.